So when you recorded this album, were you able to meet up and record it together, or did you have to like record and send it to each other?
No, so we never really went inside during the pandemic. Like we started off, in 2020, me and Zach were working on a double album with the Smith and Myers project. We put that album out in 2020. We actually did 22 drive-in shows in the United States with Smith and Myers. We all arrived in Charleston, in South Carolina with Eric right around June of 2020. Inside of that year also with Shinedown, we had brought forth the song Atlas Falls, which we worked with Direct Relief to raise $500,000 for COVID-19 response. So we were doing a lot with that. As we were working on the record that became Planet Zero, that first initial 2 months that we were together, like June, July, roughly August, I started to make calls to studios that we had worked in the past, just to kind of get an idea of sorts, like, hey, are you opening up the studio for time? Even if, we'll do the protocol, whatever we need to do to get in, because here in a moment, we're going to want to, because we were writing at that time, we're going to want to start putting these things down. And they just were like, no, not at the moment. We can't allow anybody in. So it was very clear. It was very clear at that time, okay, we're not going to be able to get into a studio. And what's interesting is that our last album, Attention, Attention, Eric had a commercial studio for the better part of 12 years, and Attention, Attention was the last thing recorded in that studio, and we pulled everything out of it, and he sold the location. So he had a home studio, more of a writing studio at his new house, but not a full studio with a live room and all the components and the elements that we would need. So we took 18 weeks and we built a studio from the ground up on his property. And it's one of the most incredible state-of-the-art studios that I've personally ever seen, because he put so much work into it. But we did not have any acknowledgement of being able to get into a studio, and we knew we had to start putting this down, but we didn't have a place to do it, so we built one.
That's one of the coolest things I've heard. So we don't have a studio. Let's build it.
It was not an easy. It was not easy. I got to give all the credit, honestly, to Eric and his tech, Hoogie, who was there with us the entire time, because Hoogie is Eric's tech on the road, but Hoogie also was our he was our A1 PA on Attention, Attention. It was his first time ever working in a studio, and he was amazing. So we brought him back for this too, and he was so instrumental in building out the bones of the studio. And then two of Eric's really good friends, Matt and Kenny, who are friends of his, are just very skilled carpenters. They went in, because everything in the studio is all hand built. It wasn't like we ordered certain like sound proofing and different things and what have you. Everything, the walls, it's very like a lot of physics going into the build on this, and it was all done by hand. And because we were like, if we're gonna do it, then let's do it right the first time. So those 18 weeks, like no one slept, like nobody slept. Especially Eric. And I talk about like, my part of the build. The only part of the build that I did was writing half of the money to the check, of what it was going to cost. That was the extent of my, working, was writing the check, but it was all worth it, because it's an incredible studio.